They go to tuck them in at night before going to bed, and they're startled by the sight. The child is levitating above the bed while sleeping. I've had children who, when they were younger, before I met them, their mothers told me how they used to move objects and was so worried about what to do. Of course, the parents' first reaction is, this is a strange thing, don't do it anymore. Please stop. Sometimes they even bargain at 3 or 4 years old. Since they are still so connected to the universe, for them there is no need for bargaining because they just know what their mother wants, what she thinks, and what they need to do.
Maya, do you think there is any truth to the claim that many women in today's world who have trouble getting pregnant are not ready for the new children?
There is truth to that. We can't really be prepared because it will be very different from anything we've ever imagined. And the mothers say, I hear them in my head, but it feels like I'm making it up, but they're not making it up. That's exactly how it is. One of the little children I had just been talking to told me, it hurts me a lot when I want to have children, but I'm afraid.
If you want to sit here next to me on these magical chairs and be one of the next guests on Reality Explorers, write to the email Stoyan Valkov, Choco or Stoyan Valkov, Choco, and share your story. Tell us about it, or whatever it is that you want to get across to people, about your transformation, your awakening, your realization about what reality is, or more precisely, what the realities are, what the realities that surround us are. And please, let's have a conversation. The children of the new era often seem different, extraordinary, strange, hard for those of us who are a bit older to understand. But despite that, they are here to give us hints about what is coming, about what we need to transform within ourselves, and maybe to pay attention to those things that we haven't even thought about until now. Exactly for this reason today, especially here on Reality Explorers, our guest is our friend Maya, who has a lot of experience with children, and more specifically with the unknown side of children, the one that should already come out and start to develop. From what we usually call abnormal, in quotes, to the most ordinary and normal. Welcome, Maya. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be your guest.
Well, that's an interesting question. Where do we begin? At the very beginning.
What are these children and why are they here, in my opinion, is one of the most important questions, because they are here exactly to help us. In a new environment that comes with the transformations that are about to happen in the world. All these changes, the transitions that will happen, they have always happened, continue to happen, and will always happen. They help us see, to let go of the old, that is, to let go of old patterns, to let go of old rules, old systems. Of course, to keep what works, but to adapt it to the new. And they, with their presence alone, with their energy, with their high vibrations, since they have extremely high vibrations, are they the ones who help us open and expand our consciousness?
If my child, let's say hypothetically, has more specific abilities, what could they be? How can we recognize them? And then what can we do once we recognize them?
The new children, and hypothetically your new child, a star child, they are all coming. By the way, it's very interesting to mention here that some of them come from our universe, others from different distant ones. That is, they come from both nearby planets and distant ones, which makes them very different in their way of thinking and behavior. They can be clairvoyants and they can have many talents. I'm just listing a few of their talents now. It's not necessary for them to use all of them. Usually they use one or two, and these abilities always manifest in childhood. After that, there's a period when they sometimes get blocked, not always. and then they unlock again when they grow older, or usually after the period of growing up during the teenage years has passed, because that's when really big changes happen to the body, and sometimes it's better for those talents to be locked and they can be starting with that very strong intuition, which she has. Of course, intuition is always infallible, but hers is on a completely different level from our intuition. How, for example, they intuitively know very often when talking to someone how that person will finish their sentence. And very, very often, you know, sometimes we might think that they read minds or are telepathic. They are very telepathic, and we will talk about that now. Okay, but they almost always know how to finish your sentence. Very often they will finish it in their head because they've already been taught by their parents and by society that it's not polite to interrupt or things like that. Or sometimes people get offended when you finish their sentence. Here we'll also say something about the aura, for example, which maybe people don't know yet, or it's new to them. Our aura, our energy field, when we're happy and when we feel good and we're joyful, cheerful, it expands and can extend from 3 to 5 meters. That's 3 to 5 meters to the left, 3 to 5 meters to the right, forward, backward, up and down, which means that when we sit close to each other, we mix and blend our auras. And if I am such an intuitive child or your own intuitive child, they will absolutely feel whatever you are feeling at the moment, and they will also sense what you have felt before, or if you have any issues, or so on, which is very different from the people who came before who were not so sensitive. So they'll know what you're thinking and be able to finish your sentence for you. Actually, it's like an extreme sensitivity where they just know without knowing how or from where, so strong intuition, premonition, telepathy. Actually, that's why these children start speaking later. Sometimes they begin to speak at 3 years old or even at 4, because they are still so connected to the cosmos that for them, there is no need to start speaking, because they just know. They understand what their mother wants, thinks, and what they need to do. Very often, for example, mothers think or share that their child doesn't speak, and when they reach 3.5, they start to worry. This is the most common concern for a parent. And when I start asking them various questions like, does your child understand you, for example, when you talk to them? Yes, sometimes even before I tell them, I want to ask them to go get their cup or their snack or to go sit down and eat. It's as if they've already heard and understood me, and they go and do it. And very often mothers say, I feel like I hear it in my head, but it's like I'm just imagining it, yes. And of course, when we start communicating with children like that, it's usually telepathic at first, since this isn't just their gift. We all can do it. It's just that originally, since we are multidimensional beings in a body, we've simply forgotten. While they remember, they know, and they are so connected that they don't forget it, whereas we have forgotten it for one reason or another. And the mothers say, I hear them in my head, but it feels like I'm making it up, but they're not making it up. That's exactly how it is, and that's one of the many gifts. The other one, let's say the most common one, is remote viewing.
Super.
That's very interesting. Yes, remote viewing, also telekinesis. I've had children who, when they were younger, before I met them, their mothers told me how they moved objects and were so worried about what to do. Of course, the parents' first reaction is, this is a strange thing, don't do it anymore, please stop. And the children very quickly learn to lock it away. Which on one hand anyway, I mean later on telekinesis, specifically moving objects, almost always when children have it at a young age, it gets locked away because the child has to go through a certain process. Let's say the training, and imagine some little kids as if playing, they start moving different objects. And I don't like you, I throw a glass at you, so everything always happens naturally and as it should. But these kids remember this and involuntarily and unconsciously sometimes move objects when they're upset, which can sometimes be very dangerous. But at first glance, when you see them, for the parent, it's very scary because it's unfamiliar too. They think, this is my child, and I want my child, as you nicely put it in quotes, to be normal. And the truth is, these kids are more than normal. They're just very, very different. Different in the good sense of the word. Sometimes we put a negative connotation on the word different, but actually they are different in a good way. Because thanks to them, we see many different perspectives, completely new things that open our minds. And besides telekinesis, now that I think about it, they can levitate. Many of them do it in their sleep. I had many mothers, yes, many mothers. By the way, they shared with me that they go to tuck them in. At night, before going to bed, they are stunned by the sight. Their child is levitating above the bed while sleeping. And of course, at first they are terrified, wondering what it could be, scared of what might happen. And the child is just levitating, its blanket hanging underneath, right? Which is really, just think about it. People who have children, people who don't, who suddenly go to check on their child and it's levitating while sleeping. It's just so that...
It's a shock, that's for sure.
Exactly. And at first they are stunned and don't know what to do. They start rubbing their eyes, thinking they're seeing things, usually call their spouses because honestly, it's a shock in this situation.
It's very important not to shout, not to scream, not to startle the child while they're in this state.
Exactly. It's very important to just leave the child alone because they will come back down, as they say, absolutely naturally on their own. So it's very likely that absolutely all of us do this. We just don't know it, especially when we're little, because that's when we're most connected to our higher self, with the avatar, with the cosmos, with our energetic essence, which is actually able to do these things, naturally, just naturally. It's a natural gift. And very often when they call out, for example, because when you see this, you can't believe your eyes and you call out, whether it's the helper, the nanny, or someone else, your husband, for example, your spouse, and they want to wake them up, to ground them. Really, the advice is always not to touch, just leave them. You shouldn't startle them with sounds, even though, mainly not to panic. This is completely normal.
Great, thank you so much for saying that. Yes, I want us to make a brief aside about today's children and that they are much more emotional, as you said and reminded me to remind you why they are more emotional, how they react and how they adapt in this time right now. And one more thing. What happens to children who are born in, let's call them, families that follow the status quo and are not used to this kind of experiences? How does the child survive? How does it manage to get through all of this and preserve the gifts that are inside them?
The second question especially is very important. Thank you so much for this question. Let's start with the first one, in it. Here I can say that there is a bit of a division, like archetypes. Some children are extremely unemotional. Let's say they used to be rare, but now they are coming in large numbers. However, they are very interesting children. And I will start with the unemotional ones, then we will move on to the very emotional ones and the unemotional ones among the emotional ones. The difference is that the energy structure of the subtle bodies, that is the energy bodies, are very different. Mm-hmm. For example, the pre-physical body is our astral body, where old beliefs and actually feelings and emotions are stored. And it is very different for unemotional children. If we assume that, just to make it easier to say, they have no emotion, they don't understand the emotions of others, and accordingly for them, nothing is taken for granted. There, everything has to be told to them exactly as it is, straight to their face, otherwise they won't get the hint. For example, if you want to explain something to them in a roundabout way, they won't understand it, they just won't get it. With them, it's to the extent that they're often labeled as being on the autism spectrum, where they don't have... They don't understand emotions, but no one ever asks why they don't understand them. And here it's always very important to ask, what Whatever is presented to us as new, we should always ask ourselves why. And if you manage to answer this question for yourself, you will understand the given thing. And when you understand it, then you can accept it. Because we always talk about accepting this, accepting that, accepting these children. It's very important to accept these children as they are. But why don't we accept them? Because we don't understand them. But when we understand them, that's why it's very important to understand how they have developed, how they are different from each other. And even if they fall into the same category, they are still different. And here for the non-emotional children, for example, I'll give examples. It's easiest to explain that way. I've heard teachers, for instance, call them, well, they're like little robots and they're not entirely wrong. That's a label, and everyone attaches a different meaning to it. However, here they are not far from the truth. Why? Because due to the lack of emotionality, they still get the job done properly, or at least the way they have decided it should be done. Which, if we compare it to a very emotional child who will start to ask themselves questions to say to themselves, now, I get very anxious. Will I be able to do this or not? They might not even finish the task. Whereas the non-emotional child, that is the little robot, as they might call it, it has come here to do a job, and this emotionality, it prevents it from doing it. It knows it has come without being suppressed. Yes, well, that's exactly right. This center, in my opinion, if you do a brain scan, this center, maybe there are even such studies, it's just either not working or not active. Even though they still feel some emotions, they're not completely without emotion, they're just very different. And for these children, for example, it's very important to start from a young age. The parents need to teach them about emotions because they don't recognize them. At least to recognize them, just so that later they can interact with, classmates, with people, since that way it will be easier for them. They are usually more like outsiders. They can't, yes, their communication is different. And if, for example, you take such a child to a psychologist, they will say, well, he has a communication problem. And actually, yes, the problem with communication is there. But why does he have this problem? Because they don't recognize emotions. And when you don't know what the other person is feeling, how do you communicate with them? For example, in kindergarten or at school, one child gets a stomachache and starts to bend over, to curl up, and such a child who is their best friend, who is not emotional, they will stand next to them and do nothing. They will just register it. In the child's mind, it's just the other child is doubled over, something is wrong, but they won't realize that the other child's stomach hurts, for example. A big difference, which from our point of view, it's clear, it's obvious that their stomach hurts. And when you ask such a child, why didn't you call the teacher? Look, your best friend is curling up, his stomach hurts. Well, I didn't understand. He didn't tell me that his stomach hurts. That's where it is. It needs to be. And on the other side, there are also the highly emotional children who actually have a different emotional body, that is, energetically. They are very emotional because they are the ones who have actually come to heal our emotional issues.
By emotional issues, do you mean some kind of accumulated pain, whether overall?
Overall, so where does our emotionality come from? These are emotions, but what are they? They are accumulated feelings from before. Where do these feelings come from? From accumulated beliefs, from accumulated old beliefs, which of course by old, we don't just mean from childhood or from our ancestors, but also old ones. They can be from yesterday, from last month, from last week, old beliefs.
Yes, unreal, we're always accumulating.
That's right, we accumulate them both unconsciously and often consciously. If a person is very aware, she immediately senses it and tries to, yes, either release it, because these things that actually enter our energy field and all these accumulations, it's good for us to release them. And we do it, again, unconsciously, very often through sports, music, singing, running, especially dancing, and many other things, swimming, of course, any kind of sport. Water, as one of the main elements, is very healing, so it works very well. And the children themselves are so emotional because with these high vibrations, they feel everything. But here I'll give a very good example. Yes, especially for these children, it's very hard for them to be in places that are crowded, where it's noisy. where there are a lot of smells, maybe from perfumes, but it's the intensity of the scent different from, say, 56 different places. And for them, this just becomes an overload, even for their own bodies, and they don't feel well in such places. Because just imagine the aura. Wherever you go, the more people there are, and they are sensitive after all. Literally, when you pass by someone close to you, your aura touches their aura, meaning you've brushed against each other. And of course, if they are people or children who are happy or have high vibrations, it will probably be really cool. But very often, that's not the case.
Unfortunately. And actually, when
we brush up against people who have a lot of problems, are very sad, or are victims, which is quite common. These children don't like it at all, and they will avoid it. Sometimes they won't have a choice. They'll have to go. Maybe their mother took them to the mall or to the movies or to the theater, although at the movies and the theater, at least everyone goes with the attitude, the intention to
have something in common.
There is a common goal.
There?
Yes, and to have fun, even if you bring your problems there. Somehow you radiate something completely different, and it's easier there. But places that are crowded with a lot of people, these children just don't feel well. They might get a headache at school. They don't feel well because they sense everything from everyone. And just imagine such a feeling. You sense everything from everyone, the good, the bad, and mostly the bad, because that's what gives you chills. It's not easy. It's not easy. And these children don't like stressful situations, and they can't really handle such pressure very well. With them, things need to happen a little differently even here. They make us think about whether we can change some of the things we do, how we do them, and why we do them. And especially in the education system, the way of teaching needs to change now, because many of these children are coming in, and their emotional sensitivity especially helps them to really process and show us things. Because they are our mirrors, children are always our mirrors, especially for their parents, since they spend more time with them, but also for everyone around them, teachers, relatives, acquaintances, even strangers. They are our mirrors. They show you exactly what you need to work on, what bothers you and why, and they also reveal your fears.
And how do these children cope? Let me remind you of my second question, because it's really important to me that this is talked about, that people talk about it, most of all, that it's discussed.
It's extremely important. They cope in many different ways depending on the situation, since there can be quite a few different elements in such a situation. And here it's very important to say that some of the children don't cope well. And what happens is, first they completely lock away all their gifts. They accept very often, let's say it's the opinion of the parents, that is, that they are strange, that they are good for nothing. Such lunatics, all the epithets you can think of, abnormal, they even call them crazy. Or there are even harsher words we've heard in these cases. It's even more so here, especially if there's any kind of violence. These children, unfortunately, start to develop even psychological issues, and it's not good for them. Some of them, of course, always have a chance to turn things around if they seek help. So these children always remind us that we decide how to accept a given situation. And something really bad might happen to you, but how you take that bad thing, whether you become a victim or you pull yourself together and say, yes, this is happening to me, what can I learn from it? And there are also many children who are in an extremely bad situation. They have been, on the verge of feeling like victims. I even have cases where children have been mistreated. Despite that, they manage to overcome, despite all these layers. They are very strong souls, very strong, and in an instant they go through this transformation, through this transition, and somehow they really do manage. When you ask them when they are older, sometimes I have met such children already. Teenagers they tell me, It was very hard, it was terrible, but at the same time, I knew that it was kind of like a lie. In other words, they were still connected. And they know that this is an illusion and that you decide how much to believe in this illusion or not, and to what extent. And a child is very, very, very smart. They are very sharp-minded. They are very mature from a young age. Reminded me one day that actually we are playing roles. We are playing our roles and we do it very well. And the child itself said, the bad thing is that mom and dad, for example, when they play their roles, they believe in them so much that they forget they have other roles too. And then it gets interesting. Why? Because when we believe that we only play one role, first of all, of course, we limit and restrict ourselves, but we get so deeply into that role. And a little child told me this, and when we think about it more deeply, what does this sentence mean? They think very, very deeply. They are not superficial children. It's that we as people, when we believe in a role so much that we start to identify with it. And when something happens, when they take that role away from us, we feel lost. We don't know where we are, who we are. But actually, we are much more than just one role. We are all the roles we've played. And here the child is right. We are simply playing different roles. It's just good to play your role well, but not to believe in it, not to believe in it. Because the moment you believe in it too much, you've already limited and restricted yourself to that role, but you are so much more than that.
Yes, you start creating the illusion that this particular role is you.
Yes.
And you even start to believe in this thing, to convince yourself, to create processes that prove to you every single day that this is all there is and you are only this.
And that's it. Yes, that's exactly how you are.
That's how we do it. A trap.
An absolute trap. Really a very good word, an absolute trap. And the children know it. And when you ask these children, in your opinion, why was it necessary? The question, why, is always key for children in general. I think it's key for everything, right? When we start to hear Matthias de Stefano says it best, if you haven't heard this, he says the following. When we ask ourselves questions, it's like a signal that you want information, and it starts reaching you in all kinds of ways. And answers start pouring in from different places. Of course, if you stop asking questions, everything stops. Questions are being asked. And when I ask one of those children why it was necessary, whether they needed to go through this, why they need this experience, this trial, this lived experience, he says, I wouldn't have learned so many things in such a short time if everything had gone smoothly. And my parents were, for example, understanding. Usually with such uncomprehending, critical parents, they are also overly treated. Otherwise, it's good for the parent to be demanding, to have rules. It's very important. Actually, it's also important for these children to have healthy boundaries for everything. To teach them if they can't do it themselves. But when parents are too demanding, critical, or uncomprehending, that's when a mismatch occurs. And sometimes the child stops feeling connected to the universe and goes too far into extremes. In this case, they need this experience since they're going through it. We always have to remember that if something happens, it's not by accident. They have drawn it to themselves, and sometimes they know very well the whole time why they need it, so that later they can help others. Usually to children who are in similar situations but can't get out, since they have managed to get out and know how to do it, after walking a certain path, helping others becomes much easier. But there are also completely different children for whom this is not a problem in such a situation.
They're in that environment but stay themselves, which isn't a problem.
They are exactly themselves. They're not afraid, they're not ashamed, not at all. They have no hesitation, even to express what they want and why. And very often they've been like that since they were little. They have guides who not only hear and see them, these children see, hear, and feel them too. That's just a small part, as I say, of their abilities. But thanks to this connection with their guides, actually, and of course they manage to see the other point of view more easily. In other words, children who were very aware from a young age have shared this with me. There are many such children, and they are in an unpleasant environment, let's even say. what am I saying, mistreated and simply in an unpleasant atmosphere. At home, the environment is very important. For star children, it should be loving and understanding, but obviously they also need other experiences. And here, yes, the polarity we live in always, and these children tell me that actually they haven't accepted it. The way it seems to us when they tell us about it, or the way we feel it when they describe it to us, dramatic, traumatic, they understand it differently. The whole time they were experiencing it, they understood that their parents, first of all, that they have, let's say, a very unbalanced way of thinking. And they themselves were not satisfied with life, and they grew up in an even more unpleasant atmosphere. And they themselves were abused and couldn't get out of that state. And these children, in fact, have this clear understanding. As I keep saying, they know many things without knowing where they come from or how. But somehow they keep telling me about living through the heart, that this is the new direction. And that's why we'll talk a little about it. These little birds actually say that they don't take it so dramatically, which is very interesting. They see from the parents' point of view that the parents themselves are so unhappy that they can't do anything else. And they, to some extent, not only understand them, but also say that their parents gave their best, which is a very interesting point of view. And they're very much about forgiveness. These new children are very forgiving. Some forgive faster, others more slowly. Let's say it takes more time depending on how intense that experience was for them, in my opinion. And they say that it's very important to forgive, because everything that's on the other negative side and in the polarity of forgiveness, like anger, there's a bitterness, some of it remains. Even, yes, accusations, yes, guilt, there are also accusations and, other low, let's say, yes, energetic emotions and feelings, exactly. And actually, that's what they are. They say that they are very harmful to the physical body, which we already understand from how the emotional body works. All of our emotions start to manifest in the physical body, and we start to not feel well. Very often, these children have aches and pains here and there, constantly without knowing why, until they learn very quickly to release these emotions.
Have you had cases of children who want a lot, and you see that they are very connected to the cosmos, they are aware, they see the energy, but again, they are in a family that does not share that perspective? How do you communicate with such a child, knowing that later they will go into a different environment? What do you do in those minutes or hours you have with them? How do you decide and choose what to imprint in their consciousness so that they can continue to develop afterwards?
Actually, that's a very interesting question, and the answer is very simple. Because purely intuitively, anyone who works with children knows, we just intuitively know what that child needs. Like today or this week, it will be one thing, next week it will be something else. But in the beginning, let's say, because at the start, whenever we do something new or something new is introduced to us, new things happen, new challenges arise. Because when you work with and have such children, whether they are yours or around you, it is a big challenge. Every day, new things keep coming up, and just when you get used to the old ones, there is no beginning and no end. And it's also important to say here that the creativity of the person working with them, whether it's a teacher, parent, grandmother, grandfather, uncle, or aunt, is very important. Because through creativity, we come up with new and new approaches, which also come through intuition, but right from the very beginning. When I started working with them, I was already involved in other things before that. And I had a connection with my guides, and they helped me a lot. That is, I would connect with their guides and receive information about what is important for this child at this moment. And they have all the invisible help they could want. After that, I could directly communicate with their guides, and then Lately, I can say that the communication is already on a completely different level. I communicate directly with their avatar, and he literally tells me what is good, which exercise to do. I also learn a lot of new things from them. I also learn a lot this way, and they tell me, for this child now, this, and this. You have to do a meditation, and I have no idea what this meditation is. I tell the child, little one, now we are going to meditate. We close our eyes and breathe. It's always very important to start, and for these children, it's very important to learn to breathe properly, because many of them don't breathe properly.
How does that happen? In short, I know it's a separate topic, breathing is very special, but let's touch on it. If you want to support everything we do on our channels, you can do it through PayPal, Patreon, or by becoming a member of the Pokloni channel. Thank you for giving us the reason to keep creating consciously, to change, to grow, to improve, and to learn from each one of you.
When we breathe, when we're in a hurry, we don't breathe properly because we breathe with our chest, and that's shallow breathing. And then actually very little oxygen gets in. Anyway, in the lungs, but also the processes in the body itself are different since the breathing is rushed and shallow. When we talk about proper breathing, it's always with the belly. It's called diaphragmatic, with the diaphragm, because it rises and falls. And actually, when we breathe with the belly, part of it also goes up into the chest. However, then you take in much more oxygen and completely different processes happen, as this slow breathing is very important for the nervous system. We're talking about everyone. And for these new children, their nervous system works differently. Because their subtle bodies are different, accordingly, their physical body is also a bit different. They have what I call new DNA with some strands active that aren't active in us. They can't help but be a bit different. They think differently, feel differently, and see the world in a completely different way. We start with breathing, we go into meditation, and I am told what to do, where to go, what to see. And that's how it often happens. Since I'm very visual, I see images, movies are shown to me. So for me, it's a combination. It's almost never just information, and very often I just know what to do. I have a lot of all these things. Sometimes it's direct. I hear a voice in my head telepathically, the higher self of the child or the person. Sometimes I know exactly what to do, depending on the situation, yes. And sometimes I see what we need to do very visually, which is the easiest for me in my case.
Maya, do you think there's any truth to the statement that many women today who have trouble getting pregnant aren't ready for the new children?
There is truth to that. There is truth that not only women, but also society is not ready for the new children. And that's why they suffer, because they are misunderstood. And that's why we put them into categories, and the categories come with labels, yes, and the categories are absolutely varied. But there is also something else about women who in general have difficulty getting pregnant here, energetically. Since we know from the shamans that before a disease or something appears in the physical body, there is unbalanced or disharmonious energy in the energy bodies. And even the shamans could sense it, see it, and before it reached the physical body, they saw it in the energy body and prevented it. So there it served as a preventive measure. Now we are far from those intuitive practices. And actually, with women like this, you need to understand where that imbalance usually lies. Because of many layers, let's say, from past centuries, that the woman is sinful, that the woman is incomplete, that she is unimportant, that she has constantly been oppressed in the past, not to mention the burnings and so on. Slavery, servitude, and inevitably, as this has accumulated, it gets imprinted on the next generation through the female line, usually in the energy field, which then affects the physical body. And there, the first two chakras are responsible. the first chakra and the second chakra. For me, these women need to work with these two chakras, the first and the second chakra, to balance them, to harmonize them, to visualize the colors, to
dedicate time to them.
attention. Yes.
One has always looked for the solution in the physical and starts to blame himself even more and worry even more. He then closes himself off, and I just think about the women, why am I saying this? There are many people who watch our shows and have watched many shows, not just ours, but various ones around the world and colleagues and so on. However, when it comes to their own life and their situation, I say this from personal experience with people, they insist that things should be a bit different there, okay? But then where do these, let's call them rules and principles of the universe go, the ones that apply to everyone? The world is a mirror. Look at yourself, look at others, change yourself, everything changes. That's what I'm wondering, whether, to what extent, for example, even what we're talking about right now. Because you can offer a different technique, we can suggest a practice, another point of view. But what do you think is at the core? What do these ladies need to realize in order to open all of this up and for it to start flowing automatically and naturally?
One sentence always somewhere in there inside yourself when you go deep within. But here it's really a lot. The work is very internal, to have your eyes opened, to really go deep inside yourself. There's even a technique where you imagine yourself as a smaller version of yourself, like a tiny you inside yourself. And from your brain, you slide down a slide into your heart, as if you're coming into your heart. It knows, and it's not judgmental, not unsupportive. On the contrary, it will support you, it will tell you, it will encourage you. And here, when they go deep inside, deep into their heart, into themselves, to see where they are placing this limitation on themselves, that they can't have children because everything is on an energetic level. Somewhere there you are putting up barriers or blocks that are stopping you. You might think there aren't any, you might not realize it, but on an inner level, for example, one of the things is thinking that you won't be a good mother because you had a bad experience in your childhood, your mother wasn't good, not good enough. That's what you thought, or you had experiences that were traumatic and you told yourself, I want to have children, but I'm afraid. This is an inner process that is hidden, concealed. It's a bit like having a rug and everything is swept underneath it in a pile and you're afraid to lift the rug because you're scared, even if you don't realize it. The point is to go into your heart and ask yourself why, where, and usually it's connected to fear. And if it's not the fear that you won't be a good parent or a good mother, it might be the fear that everything will change drastically, which is true.
For sure, nothing is the same. Once a parent, always a parent. It's not like on the computer where you log in and then log out, goodbye. It doesn't work like that.
That the fear might come from this, and it could be completely involuntary, completely unconscious. And very often there are blockages from, let's say, other parallel realities, or for those who prefer the term past lives. And because we've experienced things that we don't want to go through again, something like that. For example, we've had many children, 10, 15. It was so hard for us that we literally swear that we never want to have children again, even in the next life. And somehow we don't have children, even though we might think we want to. So they need to look deep inside themselves and say, there must be something, some reason why this isn't happening to me. When I find it and let it go, because the truth is, once you find it, you'll want to let it go. The point is to find it. And this could also be an old belief. It could be something really simple, but they need to look inside themselves. And sometimes it's really hard to do it alone. That's why there are helpers, and there are many different meditations for such things, even guided ones. There are plenty of them online, in my opinion. But there are also therapists who, through different modalities and techniques, can help you and help you find out what it is. One of them is actually theta healing, which is theta healing. That's exactly how you go deep inside yourself and dig, 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 dig until you reach a little seed, where actually from that seed you It may be indirectly connected at first glance to that problem. When you reach the seed and become aware of it, meaning it happens through awareness again, and you accept that this is no longer valid for you and you change. When you change your attitude and belief about that specific thing, things calm down. You can also use mantras, for example, or repetitions where you tell yourself, I will be a wonderful mother. And then, as usual, but mostly people are afraid that they won't be good parents, but there is no such thing as a bad parent. He does the best he can.
From your experience with your own children and with everyone you've worked with so far, in your opinion, what is the most valuable message they leave us for the new era, for what might be coming?
Many of them say that something is coming that we can't even imagine, which, should we understand it as something very interesting and be excited, or as something very scary? Of course, as something very interesting. We always choose to understand it that way, and they say that we do. It's exciting, yes, exciting. Even more exciting times are coming, but they say that inevitably this will bring chaos and confusion in the material world. Because in order for it to change, the change has already begun on an energetic level. The children themselves feel it, and they start getting involved in things that will assist this process. They are very intuitive, they understand which way the wind is blowing, yes, and they focus on that. Although, as I've said, society pushes them in a certain direction, they are quite stubborn sometimes, which is very good because it works. And they say that for the times to come, we can't really prepare because it will be very different from anything we've ever imagined. But they say that the direction is that we need to follow the path of the heart, meaning to be. What has impressed me the most is that they constantly guide us away from thinking, from the brain, from the mind, rather to go into the heart and to do, to think, to act from the heart, which has a specific archetype. These children have very big eyes and are very beautiful. Maybe you have met at least one such child. The moment you look at them in their eyes, you have a direct connection with their soul and it overwhelms you. It's a feeling like no other, like endless love, like a calm and peace that you feel just by looking at them or being close to them. They give it to you, they pass it on to you, and when you accept it, you feel so good. And the more children like that there are, that's their direction. Through the heart, we can feel this infinite love and peace and abundance, which our brain, our thinking constantly makes us feel we lack. A lack of peace and abundance, but in fact we have all of this. And because they know and feel this, material things are not important to them. Every day, normal things are very difficult for them. They're not that important, which also stresses both parents and teachers. These children constantly forget things. Sometimes they even forget to feel hunger or thirst. They are very different. They love to walk barefoot, and their parents constantly remind them, put your shoes on, put your shoes on.
But they don't.
They run much hotter. They love to climb trees, to be in nature, to dig in the dirt, to connect with the elements. Well, there's a division here again. Some really love to get dirty, others don't, but they all love to connect with the elements. Because, for example, some of them have told me that we are constantly separating ourselves from nature, but we are one, and it's hard for us to believe that we and nature are one. We see ourselves as totally separate things, but no, for them we are one. That is, we are one with the elements. We have them inside our bodies. Of course, we are one. But most of all, they really emphasize the relationships between people. One of the little children who had just started to speak told me, it hurts me a lot when I see how people interact with each other, and said, this pain is stronger than physical pain. That really impressed me. Then, and even later, when I worked with a similar boy, a teenager who was self-harming, he said, I asked him, why do you hurt yourself? What does it give you? Why do you do it? It must have some benefit for you. It distracts me from this inner pain that I see and feel. Because people don't care for each other, they've separated and have all these negative feelings toward each other. They have no tolerance, he said. And that we've forgotten how to be tolerant. But when a child says this, how powerful is it, right?
Recently, to add to this, I witnessed a situation where, as usual, parents were smoking cigarettes outside. The child comes out, looks at them, and there are other people there as well, and I'm there too, and the child says, "These are my parents." And at that moment, you, who are not the parent of this child, feel an overwhelming emotion. First of all, at that moment, you get startled. And besides, but feelings and states of shame start to arise. You start thinking deeply, wondering what's going on. You have to hesitate. You hesitate about courage, actually, that the child doesn't have courage. They don't have the beliefs like, what are you for me to be brave to do it? These are my parents. Here they are, look at them, which for me was really a sign and a model. Actually, how they're configured, what new code they have, and what new part of the program they have.
They absolutely have such new code. And for another reason. Now, you remind me, many of the New Star children, they don't have a karmic connection to planet Earth. So all these overlays and layers, they don't have them. What comes first is a sense of ease, as you say, a kind of courage. They are neither ashamed, nor do they have those fears about saying things as they are, which we, for example, have had for many years and struggled with 100%. And the other thing is that because many of them don't have previous experience on planet Earth, meaning they are coming for the first time, many of them now, especially the new ones with the golden thread in their aura, let's say, they carry strong Christ energy within them. For the first time when they are in a physical material body, it is extremely difficult for them. And for them, even our most basic things are extremely complicated. But that's where the misunderstanding from others comes in, right? Well, they can't, fill a glass of water for themselves. But on the other hand, they don't need to fill a glass of water because there will always be someone to do it for them. And they will pass on what they can. And actually they can learn, but it will be difficult for them. That requires much more attention from parents, and teachers need to be patient, but usually they are not. And, in the busy everyday life, everyone has their own priorities. And I really hope that the priorities of the parents of such children will be rearranged so that they can help them, because they learn quickly. We have much more inexperience. These ones are coming here for the first time, eating for the first time. Many of these children can't eat at first. This will be very helpful for parents of such children. That is, in the beginning, when they start giving them more solid food, everything will have to be cured for at least 3 to 4 years. It's a baby phase for a long time, and it's not that the child is abnormal or that something is wrong with them. This is normal since they've never chewed before. And that's actually quite strange if you think about it, considering we've come to Earth several times. We have some experience, but these children have no experience at all. And actually, the parents' goal here is to assist these children, as well as teachers, uncles, relatives. It's very important for everyone to first accept them as they are, because then the children know they can truly be themselves and show all their gifts. Then they can unlock everything instead of locking it away, and help them with these simple things without judging them. These children are really very different in many ways. It's not just in the way they eat. There's also a period when they eat only 2 or 3 things, for example. And that's very strange for a parent, not to mention the grandparents. There too. And actually, there needs to be some understanding and then acceptance, because in order for us to accept something, we need to understand it, and that's important.
Finally, I would like to ask you to say one sentence from your intuition right now. Something you feel needs to reach people.
Well, we are like these children too, because we also come from the stars, so they are not that far from us in terms of abilities in everything and in the way they think. It's just that we have so many layers from society, from religions, from everywhere, from teachers, from the way we were raised, from parents, from ancestors, great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers. From all these layers, they just make us think that we are this or that, or limit ourselves so much that we even lose who we are. But it's actually good to get lost so you can find yourself after that. I wish for everyone to seek, because when they seek, they will find themselves and the answers that interest them. Ask questions. When you ask questions, the answers always come.
Maya, much respect and thank you for being our guest. And thank you for watching the latest episode of. If you want to watch more like this in the future, leave a thumbs up. We won't be upset if you share it with your friends. Become members of the channel, because the more the better. Thank you for walking together with us towards a true one of us out of the illusion that surrounds us. We thank each and every one of you for your support, for your perseverance, for your patience, for your understanding, for your honesty, for the change. See you soon.